So, as I was contemplating the idea of Advent being in the first week, and this being the week of hope, I came across a picture that I had to pause and just look at for a few minutes. And this is the picture of the current situation in Gaza. And I looked at that, and I was thinking about hope, and I was thinking to myself, and I want you to imagine this yourself. Imagine if this was Bend, Oregon. Imagine if missiles and gunfire were just raining in and leveling Bend, Oregon. And then you had to be the one that went out searching for food under fire. Or you were the one going into Gaza to try to clean up after the ceasefire, worried about turning over pieces of rubble because perhaps a bomb was left under that rock or that boulder. And as I thought about that, I thought, in this situation, hope is something entirely different than sometimes we consider hope to be. And I think for us, a lot of times when we're gathering together at Thanksgiving to see our family and our friends, maybe we're hopeful someone will bring that casserole, or we have hopes about this and that. And that's really just a superficial hope. And the type of hope I want us to focus in on this week is this type of hope. The type of hope that when we're in the hardest struggles we've ever been in our life, when the world looks dark and just going outside could be the end of your life, there's something in that darkness that pushes you forward. And in the scriptures today, we see for the nation of Israel at this time in its history, Isaiah was offering such a hope. And I love what he says here in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. What is Isaiah doing? He's giving them a hopeful vision that kind of pierces through the darkness of war. It pierces through the fears that we have of just going outside and meeting this kind of reality, when we have some kind of a hope in us that there might be something in the future when this time has passed. And it's holding on to that thread of light, that hopeful vision that's helping us move through this hard period of time and really inspiring our souls in the depths of our being. And that's the type of hope that I walk in the light of the Lord, to see beyond what is in our present reality, and to keep our eyes fixed on this greater thing to come. And what is the greater thing to come? It's the Lord Jesus Christ and all his glory and majesty present in our reality, bringing that hope, bringing the peace, the love, the joy, all that stuff. And it begins with this hopeful vision. And then as we think about that hope, I like, because let's face it, this hopeful vision that we need, it's still necessary today. There's still war like this going all over the world. This is Gaza. I could have shared pictures of Ukraine. I could have shared pictures of other places in the world where this type of hope is making the difference between light and death. And those places aren't even being shown on the TV, but they're happening in the world. And there in Romans, Paul is calling us to consider this. And I like what he says here in Romans 13:11. He says, "It is the hour now for you to awake from sleep, for our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. And I love the idea that Paul is sharing with the Romans, because remember, the Romans were going through a persecuting time also. They didn't know if they went out to work that day or went to the market, if they were going to be snatched up by Roman soldiers and hauled off to the Colosseum to be fed to lions, because that was a reality. And so the hope of Christ in that time is also what helped them to walk the streets and to keep going, holding on to that vision. And Paul's calling them, like he's saying, you know what, this hope, it's not some passive thing, guys. Like, this is something that we get involved in. It's a call to action. And Paul is calling us, to wake up from this sleep. But not only that, he doesn't stop there. He says, put on the armor of Christ. Start dawning that vision yourself. Start becoming what it is you're looking towards in the future. So don't just hold on to this idea of hope. Start living into that hope as a conduit between heaven and earth, so that where you go, you can take that light with you. And as I thought about that, I thought, wow, if we think about that, and we think about putting on Christ and being this candle of hope that's kind of going through our community, what are the types of things we can do? How can we see this vision of hope realized in a way? And then I thought, well, with every act of love, with every act of compassion, every time we forgive someone for wronging us, every time we look towards the future of the way things could be with faithful expectation, it's like we're a little Advent candle, bringing some light to the world's shadow in one place or another. And I think we need to open our hearts and kind of let that light in, because we can do all kinds of things with ourselves. And one of the beautiful things we can do is be little beacons of hope for other people. And as I thought about that, I couldn't help but gravitate to Bishop Lou's Advent reflection. Because Bishop Lou takes that whole idea and he kind of holds the mirror in front of us to reflect on. And I love what he says in the Advent reflection book for the day. He says, for me, Advent is a time to look inward, to renovate the areas of my life, making my heart ready to receive the Lord. And that doesn't simply mean a time of reflecting. That is a time of introspection that's going to cooperate with the grace of Christ and bring about some change. It's like that old song Michael Jackson did, I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And this is what I see echoed in Bishop Lou's writing. He goes on to say, the only safe choice is a sincere spiritual renewal, praying for strength to begin anew. Have you ever been in a hopeless place and then caught the spark of Christ, seen a light at the end of the tunnel, and thought, wow, maybe I can get through this? And then what Bishop Lou is saying is, what about us though? What's standing in the way of us being in that light? And that's where we take that reflective look. And I start asking myself, okay, who am I being when I go to this place? And who am I being? And how am I acting? What am I saying? What am I doing when I go into this place? And how can I tweak that just a little bit so that I could be a better reflection of the light of Christ in the world I live in? And that might mean I need to change some things about myself. Because if we're honest with that work of looking and self-reflecting, it's not going to be very long before the Holy Spirit reveals to our minds the things we personally really probably ought to work on, right? Is it impatience? Is it, being volatile? Whatever. Is it gossiping? Are we just, meddling over here when we could be spreading light? What are the things that God calls to your mind and reflects to you in the mirror? I can't answer that for you. But I can say that I think Bishop Lou's touching on something, and that is, this is the perfect season to try to become the best version of yourself you could possibly be. Holding on to the hope of Christ and looking for just little ways that you can be just a little bit shinier, a little bit more loving, a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more compassionate, a little bit brighter of a light in your pocket of the world. And let that effect shine forth. Because it might be that somebody desperately needs that. And when they see you embodying that, just to the smallest degree, it changes their perspective. And they go, you know what? Maybe the world isn't going, down in the handbasket. Maybe there is hope. Maybe there is hope for humanity. Maybe God is about to come. Maybe we need to start turning around. And maybe if we all just dropped our guns, right, and loved each other, and we stopped being puppets for corporations and governments that want resources and want property and want control and want power, right? Maybe if we would just adopt the way of Christ, which is love and compassion, our little bit of the world would change. And that's kind of what I was thinking about with hope. And then I thought about the gospel reading where Jesus in Matthew 24:44 says, "You also must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come." And there's this question that we put in the Advent reflection, booklet that you gave out. And I hope, does everybody have one? Does everybody have an Advent reflection book? Please, if you don't have it, you have to take it today. Because the reflections start today. And they go all the way through Advent, all the way to Christmas. And when you look in there, you see one of the questions is, how are you going to cooperate with God to bring that hope into the world? It's something like that. What are you doing? What are you going to do in your little pocket of the world, in your family, at your workplace, in your community? How are you going to bring that light of hope? And as I thought about this, I come back to this almost every year. It's one of the ways I do this is in this simple Advent wreath. This is my Advent wreath at my house. And you know what? It's just perfect for my little table and my little family. But how am I going to bring hope into the world? I'll tell you how, for starters. Besides looking in the mirror and doing all that, I'm going to invite my family every night it's possible to come around this Advent wreath at dinner time, to light the candle and to read the reflections and have our hearts and minds focus in on Christ. Because when Christ becomes the center of our life and the center of our family, then it can become the center of our work, the center of our community, the center of our nation. But it all starts at that table in your home, in your own personal space. You, me, asking Christ to come in. And you know what I love about this year? I'm so glad you asked. This is what I love. My family is getting up to the age right now where my kids, they all have pretty serious boyfriends and girlfriends, right? And so they're coming over. They all came over for Thanksgiving. They're all going to come over for Christmas. In fact, looking forward to this, we, mainly my wife, because she thinks about these things better than me. We have bought stockings even for the boyfriends and girlfriends. So when they come over, they can enjoy this Christmas moment. And we can enjoy time around family and around Christ, focusing on what he's bringing to the world and sharing those gifts kind of with each other, because it is a faithful thing. So what are we doing? What are we going to do? I want you to consider that. As you go through this week, as we're moving into Advent, how is it that God is calling you as an individual to be this bright light of hope in your world, with your family, with your work, with your community, your clubs, your activities, all of that? And let's let the light of Christ, the hope of what that is, really shine forth and draw us around the table.